Hello and welcome to Better Than Fine. This is the podcast that explores what it means if being okay just isn't good enough. It examines the intersections of ancient traditions and Western science, the overlap of wellness and well-being, and we use fitness, wellness, well-being, philosophy, theory, and practice, all to help you live a life that is better than fine. I'm your host, Arlene Marshall. I'm a holistic wellness coach with nearly a decade in the fitness industry, over a decade living with a chronic illness, and I'm currently a master's degree candidate in applied positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. So my life so far has focused on studying the human condition, wellness, well-being, and human thriving and flourishing. And my guest today is Dorota Soto. She's a certified personal trainer and a certified nutrition coach. And it's PN level 2, right? Like you have the level 2 cert?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a very legitimate cert for anyone out there looking for a nutrition coach. Her specialty is working with those who are struggling with self-acceptance, accepting and loving their bodies. And in my observation of Dorota, she has really helped people make the pivot from like a reactive, aggressive action on themselves to proactive, genuine self-love and what it means to care for themselves. And Dorota, my friend, welcome to Better Than Fine.
Thank you so much for the amazing introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So I want to start off our conversation today with giving you a chance to just share your story. How did you come to this work? How did you come to working in fitness? Tell us a bit about that path for you.
Sure. So I'm originally from Poland, and I moved to New York City 11 years ago. I think it was 2009. I met someone and I fell in love. And for me, I was super shy girl moving to the big city by myself without my family and friends was really a huge thing. I moved here in June, and pretty much in August I got married. So it was pretty fast. Everything happened really fast. At this time, I was working around the city as a bartender behind the bar, and I was really young. I was 22, and my life was like a big party. I was staying up late. I was really drinking a lot. I was eating junk food, and I gained a lot of weight when I came here. Let's put it that way.
I think, and a lot of Europeans do, right? They move to the States, and yeah, that happens a lot. Okay.
That's what happens, yeah. So 3 years living here, I just decided I had to change something. And I really became a little bit more interested in exercise and cooking. And all of this kind of sparked the passion in me for fitness and nutrition. And eventually I decided to get certified and becoming a personal trainer and nutrition coach. I kind of had in my head that this job can kind of keep me accountable for my all fitness. I had this idea in my head that that's what it is, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of us end up falling into that particular thought trap.
Yeah. Yes, and at this point in my life, my husband, at that time, we were totally going in a different directions. And in 2013, we unfortunately got divorced. And I was definitely struggling, right? All my life, I wasn't really believing in myself. I always thought that I'm not really worth it of being loved or capable of, making out there. And all of my relationship in my life always led me to believe the same way. So when we split, I really, really struggled. I didn't know what to do. I had to be the one who had to move out. I had no friends really here. My family was still in Poland. So it was really hard for me to see, oh my God, what I'm gonna do now. So I literally was packing my bags and I was like, well, I have to go back to Poland. Like, what else I'm gonna do? And I had a client who eventually became my friend, and she told me, I have a small place for you that you can stay temporarily until you figure things out. So I moved for 6 months to literally a walk-in closet in Queens.
Oh, wow.
It was a very, very, very small place, but I had a place to stay, which was very important, right? So at this point, I was really motivated to make this whole fitness my career. I was still working behind the bar to be able to pay for my little room. And I also started working at the gym in the city to start building my business.
And that's where we met.
And that's where we met, exactly, yes. And I was extremely stressed during this whole time. All of it made me lose a lot of weight and caused some health issues. I was not eating because when I'm stressed, I can't eat. And I was in this kind of obsessive workout mode. I was working out at least 2 hours a day because that was the only thing that literally kept me sane and kept me going. So fast forward a few months later, I met Herman, who is currently my husband. We were working together at the same gym as well, and everything slowly became more stable in my life. And now because I'm happy and I'm in love, I gained my weight back, actually a little bit more than I wanted. So since then, I really been struggling to find my balance. I used to go from obsessive dieting to working out like crazy to the periods where I wasn't really watching what I was eating at all. And at this time, I also had, again, that vision that, since I'm a trainer and I'm a nutrition coach, I should be better. I am the person who should have this all figured out, because I'm telling my clients what to do. And in the meantime, I am so struggling with everything else in my life. So I really struggle with that part in my business and my life, which also put more stress in me.
Yeah. And I think you bring up something really important there that a lot of nutrition and fitness and well-being coaches struggle with, which is, if I'm going to be out here talking about this, shouldn't I be flawlessly executing? And as both a practitioner and your friend, like, I'm proud of you for calling that out, because I think that we need to have a conversation as professionals about owning the fact that we're also human beings. And as you know, I went through a divorce 2 years ago, and I don't know if you remember, but I also lost a significant amount of weight. And I was calling it fasting at the time. But really it was that I was keeping my own adequacy around what the scale said. And I think it's really common. And it's interesting that our industry becomes a way that we heighten that problem even more intensely. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, of course.
Please continue. Please tell us about 2019.
So eventually in 2016, I got married to Herman. We bought a house, and everything was looking really, really good for us. We were happy, married, everything was great. And in the end of 2018, I found I was pregnant, and which we were both very excited about it. And unfortunately, when I was 20 weeks pregnant, we encountered a lot of complications and we lost the baby. And after that, I was devastated. Like, I thought the whole world just literally collapsed on me. And I think I was in some kind of self-destructive mode. I was drinking more than usual, and I was eating more than usual because I felt like, well, now I can, so who cares, right? And why I gained 10 pounds during my short pregnancy, I didn't lose any of it after losing the baby. I think I actually even gained a little bit more. And I really hated my body. I felt very disconnected from it, and which was really a terrible place to be, because the one place that you think that should be safe, it wasn't my place anymore. So, and there was really no running away from it, right? Because it's my body, I'm stuck in it. So, 2 months passed, and we both decided that we just have to do something about it. Like, we have to do something to start feeling better and, happy again. So we actually, me and Herman together, start watching what we're eating. We were working out together, and the weight finally came off and start feeling a little bit better. And that was really my turning point. I really realized firsthand that women go through so many different stages and experiences in life. And while I knew it in theory, I didn't really realize it until I went through what I went. So as you can see, through all of these years, I really struggled to find what really works for me. And I finally, by practicing small habits, like, I managed how to find balance within myself, with my fitness, nutrition, and mindset. Now I really plan my workouts. I eat whole foods as much as I can. And as you mentioned earlier, I meditate, which it's a huge game changer for me. And all of it make me finally feel like I'm comfortable in my own body. I found a way to live my life with balance, enjoyment, and compassion. So that's why I am here, and that's why I'm so motivated to help women to finally feel comfortable in their own skin. And I always said that whatever you went through, whatever stops you from reaching your goals, I really want to help you overcome that and find your own balance, and to help you fall back in love with your body.
I'm hearing so many things that I want to highlight. Like I hear purpose that came out of this. Like you've done, I want to just highlight this for the listener that you have taken what was a real struggle and
Mm-hmm.
found your meaning in that challenge and then turned that meaning into purpose.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you caught this the other day. On my Instagram, I was talking about post-traumatic growth. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very common in our culture to talk about post-traumatic stress and all the ways that trauma negatively affects someone. But what you are a beautiful example of is what you went through last year, which as your friend, was hard. And thank you for being so vulnerable about it. But it's also a perfect, beautiful example of a post-traumatic growth story where you turn this hard thing into fuel for you living your purpose. So I have to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
But you mentioned balance a number of times,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to highlight that. Like, what do you think balance means? What does it look like? How do we know when we're in balance? Like, what do you like, talk to that idea of balance and what that's been like?
So I think, again, everybody is different, right? So what kind of works for me might not work for everyone else. But for me personally, balance is just to figure out a way that you're taking care of your body, you trying to be healthy and building that whole kind of routine around your daily life that serves you in a positive way, but you also enjoying your life. Because I feel like, and especially in this whole fitness and nutrition industry, a lot of people say like, oh my God, like I'm not having any fun anymore because I want to lose weight, or I want to eat healthy. But that doesn't have to be like this, right? You can be healthy, you can be fit, and you can still have fun and still enjoy your life. So by saying balance, that's what it is. And it's also not beating myself up for every single thing that I would do that doesn't necessarily support my goal.
Well, and you also bring up a good point, right? You say you're being healthy but you're not having any fun. Like, not
Mm-hmm.
having fun isn't being healthy.
Healthy. Exactly.
I think another pit that we fall into in our culture is sometimes the things that we label as fun are actually like numbing activities, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
getting blackout drunk or wasting an entire weekend on nonsense so you feel horrible on Monday morning. Like, did you
Mm-hmm.
really actually have fun, or did you
Exactly.
just do what everybody else was doing? And so that's again this mindfulness piece that comes in. And
Mm-hmm.
shameless plug, there's an episode on mindfulness. Go listen to it if you are curious and don't understand what we're talking about. But I think that you hit on some important things there. So why do you think that so many people struggle with this stuff, like the self-acceptance, the self-love? Like where in your experience focusing on this does that come from?
So self-acceptance, it's your satisfaction or happiness with yourself, right? So self-acceptance really involves self-understanding and be aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. And I see a lot of times in my work with my clients that people have trouble with establishing their strengths, but not necessarily their weaknesses, right? So, and that is a big part of not being able to accept yourself. Because if you can't name any good what is in you, and you constantly beating yourself up for every little thing, why would you even want to hang out with a person like this, right?
Yeah. And you're stuck with
Yeah.
you. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with the concept of negativity bias? Have you come across that in any of your work on this?
No, actually, I didn't.
Well, let me share that with you and
Yes.
everyone. So, if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, in order to keep alive, our ancestors would have had to be hyper aware of any potential threats. So, the people that survived in order to produce us were the ones that were more aware that like they could get eaten or something bad could happen, so that they didn't fall into those threats.
Mm-hmm.
But that also meant that our brains are more likely to highlight negative things than positive. And this is, we have brain imaging that shows that you light up more from one negative incident than two or three positive ones.
Mm-hmm.
And people who've suffered trauma, especially in early life, have a heightened negativity bias. So that's where that focus on the negative comes from. And it's why things like gratitude practice or like happiness priming becomes really important, because intentionally focusing on the positive is one of the ways that we have found to compensate for negativity bias. And that's why things like, as a coach, highlighting the positives that your client is doing, pointing out the things they're getting right, so that every time you do point out something that they need to work on, it's not like a bomb in their mind of why they're screwing up.
Yeah.
But I think you're spot on with that. So when you have a client, like, first off, how do you know when a client is struggling like this? Because in my experience, they don't just come out and be like, yeah, I hate myself. Like, how can you tell? First, how can you tell? And then what do you as a coach do to guide them on the path of it?
So I think some of the more obvious situations are when a client is saying straight up some self-destructive statements, and not necessarily, oh, I hate myself, but for example, oh, I failed. I can't even stick to my diet, exercise habits, or whatever else it is. And they're pretty much telling themselves that they just failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some more like less obvious signs, for example, like lack of motivation for change, or even lack of motivation to come and show up for a session. Or like sometimes you can see that they act defeated, like they are not excited to do any work and they're more likely to be under the weather. And I actually think that this type of signs might be a little bit more worrisome because they're not really telling you straight up what is really bothering them, and they're holding this inside them. So it's harder to kind of pinpoint what is really going there,
Yeah, and I
right?
think to add a layer to that is, so often they don't even know that that's what they're doing. They just think that's part
Yeah.
of who they are. And
Yeah.
they don't know it's something. Like, if we think back to, your version was the shy young woman who didn't know anybody in New York, and my version was the depressed, anxious, self-destructive actor.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that wasn't just who I am. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that they were baked into my personality.
Yeah.
So part of the challenge I find as a coach with this kind of person is that they don't realize that it's optional.
Yeah.
They think they have to hate themselves because that's the only state of being.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. It is really hard. Yeah.
So then the question is, what do you do? Like, as a coach, as a friend, I'm sure people listening to this have people in their life that they see this in. Like, I can immediately think not just of clients, but of people I care about. So what can you do as a person who sees this, or if you're just catching awareness of yourself, right? If you're just like, oh, they're describing me, like, what do you do?
Yeah, so there's so many different ways you can do it, but I think that the most important thing, and that's the hardest part, is if you really want to go on this journey of self-acceptance and self-love, you like really have to be committed to it. And I think if you don't really realize what's going on within yourself, it's really hard. But if you are noticing things happening like this in your life, the most important thing you can do is to commit to your self-acceptance journey. And remember, it won't be easy, it won't happen overnight, but if you commit to keep doing small actions every single day, it will eventually become easier. And there are a few things that you can get started, and I think one of the things is just be kind to yourself. And it's really time to just accept the fact that no one judges you more than you judge yourself. And you can be your own worst enemy, and that's the way it is. And so just be patient with yourself and try to accept your flaws and what you think it's not working in you, right? Because that's literally the kind of talk we usually have with each other, right? Try to also stay positive, surround yourself with some good things, write yourself sweet notes or say positive affirmation. I also have an app on my phone that sends me inspirational quotes every single day, which actually, helps. The other thing is believing yourself. If you keep saying, just say you are capable of accomplishing great things. Just believe you can do anything because you can. And you are strong and you are powerful and you literally can, accomplish whatever you want. And it's really important to say stuff like that out loud to yourself to actually start believing in it.
Well, I think part of the trick is if you're like us, right? If you're on the other side of the fence and you've like been through the hard stuff and you've done the work, you hear things like that and you're like, oh yeah, I'm with her, I know it. But when you are in the struggle, all of that sounds like platitudes,
Mm-hmm.
right? It sounds like bullshit and nonsense. Not, and I would give this the caveat, not because anything that either one of us is saying is actually bullshit, but
Mm-hmm.
because when you truly are struggling with self-acceptance and self-appreciation and self-love, and you're internally just beating the crap out of yourself,
Yeah.
the idea of like, you can do anything, believe in yourself. Like, I know for myself, when people have said things like that to me and I'm on the struggle bus, my
Mm-hmm.
internal dialogue is, yeah, thanks, fuck you. Right?
No, I totally, yeah, you're right, yeah.
Yeah. But the reason I bring that up is because the only way out is through. And I feel like until you have somebody frankly call it out, like, hey, I know this sounds like platitude, like, I know this sounds like nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't believe it's possible, you won't take any of the steps to get to the other side of this. And it really does come down to what you tell yourself, how you respond when you say mean things to yourself. Do
Mm-hmm.
you reach out to somebody else to get help or get an outside perspective? Like, who are you surrounding yourself with?
Yep,
Like, I think
absolutely.
we've talked about this before, that like, we've had some friends that have been pretty self-destructive people, and
Mm-hmm.
being around them meant engaging in self-destructive behaviors.
Yeah.
But being, certainly when I spend time with you and Herman, I notice a difference in myself because you're both really positive.
But yeah, you're right. Definitely, with who you surround yourself makes a huge
Yeah.
impact on your own well-being. It's, oh my God, it's like one of the most important things. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we don't, somewhere along the lines, and I wish I had the source at hand, I'll put it in the show notes, this idea that you are a combination of your 5 closest people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And who are you choosing to let in that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We took a weird left turn there for a second. So we throw out all of these like self definition words, like self-acceptance, self-care, self whatever. I want to talk about self-love for a second. Like, maybe it's because it was Valentine's Day. Maybe it's because it's 2020 and we're all just trying to forget what last year felt like.
Yes.
What is, but like, self-love is all over everything right now. What
Yeah.
does it mean to you? How do you cultivate it? Like, speak to that idea of self-love for a second.
Mm-hmm. So self-love means, for me, taking care of my own needs and not sacrificing my well-being just to please others. Also, self-love means to not settling for less than I deserve, right? Because I feel, and it's, I work with a lot of women. I see that especially with the women, you're just such a caregiver. You want to take care of everyone around you, and you never really take a moment and like, okay, what about me, right? So that's what really self-love means to me. And how do I practice it? So I think I mentioned that before, but I do practice positive self-talk. I say positive affirmation to myself every single morning. And example, it depends how I feel, right? And what is the day about, but I can say, I can do it. I'm good enough. I'm worthy of love, friendship. If I want, I can. I'm capable of achieving my dreams. And also the most important thing that I started recently, I also practice gratitude. And every day I spend 3 minutes in the morning and 3 minutes in the evening, and I write in my gratitude journal. And then when I find myself complaining about what I lack, I try to really take the step back, and I just try to divert my attention to all of the wonderful things that happen around me. And I really try to be more thankful. And I also meditate, which I already mentioned earlier, which it's a huge changer for me as well.
Plug for meditation. Plug it right there. Can't say it enough. So one of the things that you mentioned is reframing, right? Like, when you catch yourself kind of driving into the lack.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also talked a bit about balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things I want to be mindful of as a coach, as a person, like, is making space for negative emotion when they come up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of your practice now? And how do you navigate that as a person, as a coach, like whatever, however that
Mm-hmm.
lands for you?
Yeah, sure. So I really think that the learning how to love and accept yourself is really a journey with not really an end. There is no finish line for it, right? So do I struggle with it? Of course I struggle with it. And do I still beat myself up for certain things? Oh yeah, I do a lot of times. And will I ever get 100%? Probably not. Nobody will. But for me, I think the most important thing is that I notice more when it happens. And I do try to practice self-compassion. Again, I'm not trying to cut a slack for myself for every single thing that I do, but I at least trying to notice when it happens, and just then depending on the situation, kind of like work around that.
Yeah, sounds very reasonable.
Yeah.
um so we've talked about a lot of different practices. We've talked about balance. We've talked about self-affirmation and all of
Mm-hmm.
these different avenues. As you're and I think that you bring up a really great point, which is this idea that like you're never going to be 100% like all sunshine and smiles, right? Like
Yeah.
we all go through loss. We all have jealousy. We all, like yesterday I got angry about what was probably the dumbest thing I've ever been angry about in my adult life. I don't even want to admit it. It was so stupid, but I was just like mad for like an hour.
Yeah.
So we all have experiences like that because that's a normal, healthy part of like the human ego.
Absolutely.
But how do you know when you or your clients are like, how do you know when you're getting it right?
Mm-hmm. So I think what I mentioned before, that for me, when I'm actually able to notice how I talk to myself, I think for me that's a huge thing. Because in the past, I would just go on and on and on, and I wouldn't even realize that what is my self-talk about. So now I'm more willing, like more likely to realize actually what's going on in my head. And whatever even you said that you were just met about some stupid things yesterday, right? Even if that happened to me, I can just eventually realize that, okay, well, is that really worth it? And try to get myself out of it. In the past, if I was mad, I was mad. I mean, that was really hard for me to get out of that state.
And in my own like kudo back pat is that in the past I would have been like, I am mad and I have every right to be mad and like bleh. And this time
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what? From the moment I was angry, I'm like, this is really stupid to be angry about. This is dumb and selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just gonna ride it out. Like from the moment it happened, it's like this is stupid, but yes, I'm angry. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's progress. See, this is what progress sounds like, friends.
exactly.
Progress is not perfection. Progress is being open to the journey.
Yep, exactly. Just
Yeah.
be more aware of what little changes even happening in your thoughts and your behaviors, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think to the point of all that is that having that awareness allows you to see not only where the progress is, but where the work still is, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I've started like there's something to do with social media. And it was like, I clearly have my intentions on social media have shifted.
Mm-hmm.
I am mad that I'm not getting enough attention. Let me just recognize that, like, oh, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's time to go back to the part where, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And so so often I think now the conversations around negative emotion are like, avoid triggers. Triggers are bad. It's like, no, those things that really irritate you, if you're brave enough to look at them,
Mm-hmm.
show you where the work is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another actually very important thing what you just mentioned, confronting your fears, right? Because we are so afraid to experience something unfamiliar that we allow ourselves to become stuck in what we know. Um, and it's really important to take back steps to create the change, right? So now I actually think it's, maybe make a list of things that scares you and just choose one little thing and try to face it and understand why it's not so scary anymore, right?
Well, and I think you bring up another really good point there is like people who are successful at anything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you know, we've talked about this before. I'm gonna call you out a little bit, but I think you'll be okay with it. Like, we've talked before about public speaking, right? And
Yes.
being nervous about it. And there's this
Mhm.
perception among people who know us that because I get up and I make words all the time with my mouth, that I don't have anxiety around public speaking. But if we ask our mutual friend, Kelly Baker, who has attended me for for speaking engagements, she'll tell you that right up until the moment that I am on camera or in front of people, I am freaking out.
Yeah.
So I think it's important whenever we're in a position of influence or visibility to point out the process involved so that people know that it is a process of acquiring skills and doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I gave this talk last week, and in it I talked about self-harming, and people came up to me afterward and, you know, oh, it's so passionate of you to talk about your, you know, your journey and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, it's like, yeah, but when I was 22 and hurting myself, I thought I was broken,
Mm-hmm.
because who would do that? And I didn't know anyone else who had gone through that and been on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And we know statistically, Gallup has published stats that young women, Gen Z, are way more depressed, way more anxious, and also self-harming at rates that we've never seen in the
Yeah.
West.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's very important that I stand up and be like, here I am at 36. You perceive me as all of these things, but guess what? When I was in adolescence, I was doing what you're doing, and you can choose something else, and it's going to be okay. So for you to recognize your own like path of like, these are the things that are hard, these are the things that are stressful, but also I'm going to choose to do them anyway. Like, I think more of us need to call that out as part of
Mm-hmm.
our process in not only self-acceptance, but self-improvement.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
That was a monologue right there.
There you are.
So along those lines, that was a nice 2 up 4. What is it that you're working on right now for your own self-improvement?
So, as I mentioned to you earlier, this year I'm so excited about this year because I'm really trying to, you know, expand my business and doing stuff that I'm actually afraid of. It's a year of stepping out of my comfort zone. Let's put it that way. This is stepping out of my comfort zone, right here, being here with you.
Your very first podcast. Welcome.
Yes, there you are. So I'm really trying to do things that I thought I will never be able to do. I'm taking public speaking classes, which is, oh my God, still makes me nervous even when I talk about it. But yeah, and I'm also very committed to, when I told you about that I meditate every single day, that's definitely something that I'm still very new to, and I'm very committed to start improving that part of my daily life as well.
You mentioned things that you never thought that you would do, and that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
been a theme in my life lately, like with that speech and kind of the whole thing. And one of the things that I wrote down during your introduction is, you know, you mentioned being shy and not having a lot of confidence, and, you know, living in a closet in Queens, which people need to realize is not actually like hyperbolic.
I
Like,
know.
it's like, no, people like
People do
probably
that.
really was probably a closet.
Yeah.
What is it like to look back now? Like, so often we look forward and we're like, oh, I have to take these public speaking classes, or this thing's a challenge right now, or I'm building my
Mm-hmm.
business. And it's all about like the mountain you're trying to summit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look back at where you were, you've
Mm-hmm.
come so far. So
Mm-hmm.
what is it like to look back now at that woman who thought like, oh, I just have to give up and move to Poland, and I've got 2, maybe 3 jobs, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how I'm going to do this. What does that feel like now? Like, what are your takeaways?
Uh, God, I was just such a different person back then. It seems like it was ages ago. And I feel like even though I really wasn't believing in myself as much as I believe now, I still was taking steps to get out of my comfort zone. Because the easiest thing for me would be literally grab my bag and just go back home, go back to Poland to my family. But now when I'm looking at this and remembering the person I was there, I definitely have to say that I'm actually proud of myself that I decided that, I'm actually, gonna try to make it here. Even though I've heard so many times from many people before that I am not capable of doing this.
Oof.
So,
I'm
yeah.
proud of you too.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and your vulnerability. I think I've certainly appreciated. I hope our listeners do too. Where can people find you out in the internet? Like,
I'm on the internet. So I am very active on my Instagram account, which is at Dorota Soto.
let's just spell that for everyone.
Yes,
DOROTASOTO.
Yep, exactly. I post a whole bunch of inspirational posts over there and about nutrition, fitness, mindset, and I do weekly IGTV episodes about all of the things that I'm so passionate about. And yeah, so I think that's the best way to reach out to me and
Fantastic.
get contact with me.
Any services or webinars or anything that you want to plug while you've got an audience?
Well, I actually also have, if you are more interested in what I'm doing, I created this 5-day web training. It's about how to fall back in love with your body. It's 100% free. It's just to get you on your journey to, start loving yourself and how to get there. So if you're interested, just reach out to me and I will send it your way. I really hope that, can get something out of it. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a person who's been listening to this episode and thinking like, oh God, I think they're talking about me, head over to, so it's DOROTASOTO, Dorota Soto, on Instagram. Send her a DM and she'll send you the link for her webinar. I've taken it. It's beautiful. She's brilliant and kind and lovely. And thank you again for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.